Sorry. Once again, I forgot to unmute my mic. It's been a stream of technical difficulties. I'm sorry we're starting so late. Um, but welcome again. It's another Monday, live stream Monday. Um, if you've watched a couple of the videos in the past, I've been kind of building up to this. And I want to build on this video in the future. But what we're going to do today is we're actually going to work on building a basic campaign from scratch. So I'm not gonna do a campaign right now, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over the steps in getting that done that I use, and you can generally make a skeleton, an outline of a campaign in a matter of a couple hours, and then you have to add on the meat and everything like that. So just to start off, what I call my campaign building method, I call it the skeleton method, which is you build a skeleton of essentially an outline, just as you do in, if you've never written a novel before. I have. The first time I wrote, I just started off at the beginning in where will this take me, where will this lead. With a D&D campaign that could span possibly years, you want to have some thought into it, because throwing it out of your butt is kind of not the best, in my opinion, recommendation. You want to have an idea of where you're going. That way you can have the, Game of Thrones kind of moment where, Hodor is, you finally understand what Hodor means. I'm not going to spoil that. And so if you know where the story's going, you don't have to know every step of the leg of the journey. But can think of it like if you start Lord of the Rings and you start reading the first couple chapters. In the first couple chapters, you know the end goal. It's to throw the ring in a mountain. That's the end goal. No spoilers here. But yeah, it's, that's the end goal. So the journey isn't needed to know. The same thing with The Hobbit. We all know that they're going to try and fight a dragon. How that's going to happen, I don't know, but at least you know where the journey is headed towards, and then you can fill in all the encounters and stuff on the in-between. So that's what I mean by the skeletal method. So we're going to get into it. I'm not going to have my big, stupid face on here, but I want to go over a few things first. So with the skeletal method, with designing a quest, the first step that I always go with is that I want to find out where I am, where my players are going to be. Now, the world of D&D is so large that you can use that, you can harness that. But if you're making your own campaign from scratch, it's not a bad idea to use their realms, because there's literally realms. There's the water plane, there's the fire plane, there's the 9 levels of hell. There's a whole vast realms in which and then they keep on adding on to it. Matt Mercer's realm is now a part of canon, if I remember correctly. You can create your own and then somehow tie it in. Think of it like if you've ever played Oblivion. You fight in Cyrodiil the whole time, and then all of a sudden the DLC comes out, and here's the Shivering Isles. Surprise! There's these islands that we all didn't know about that have been sitting off on the map. It's on this different side. So, you can create your own big world. Think about it. Australia is a continent, but it's essentially a giant island that people live on. That's what all the continents are. Create your own continent, and then tie it in if you want. That's one way to go about it. Or you can, join in to the others. How I start with my world building, I'm kind of cheap about this. I just go and look for a map, a fantasy map somewhere that pleases me. That's it. That's how I decide on it's. And then I have one of my players is an actual graphic design map maker, and he's made that map into our map. Making it highly detailed, adding in a lot of artwork and all that kind of stuff. And so now that's our map. You can also, there's programs, I'm not going to show any of them because everyone I've ever found is a pay to play kind of thing. But you can log into a bunch of websites and they have free trials and stuff like that. You can design a map and it'll give you an auto-generated map. You can also pay. I think it's a couple bucks to have a map made, that kind of thing. It's however much you want to do it. I try to keep these videos as free as possible, though, so of what you need to use to start off. So, all right. So you find a map. Actually, let's just throw up the my steps. All right. So we already went over create a map or a world. You know, like I said, map makes it easy for the world. What's your general plot? This is something that, and yes, sorry, I have two cameras, so I'll try to look up there, but I've got, I don't want to look up there all the time. So for the questing ideas, for your general plot, think of it as the feet are where you start. You know, the head of the skeleton is where you end up. But, you know, the journey is traveling all the way up the legs, up the vertebrae, up to the head. And so your plot is what drives that transverse. It's what drives the quest on. So, questing ideas, I have 10 that I generally pull from. I mean, it's not, I don't just have 10. I try and come up with unique ones all the time. But I'm going to throw out 10 right now that I pulled from just media, history, stuff I know about. Inspiration is everywhere. It's not plagiarism. Oh, this is just like this. Almost everything imitates everything. Hunger Games is a knockoff of mythology. I mean, you could say Zelda's a knockoff of Lord of the Rings. It's, you know, questing to find stuff and then either destroy it or use it to unlock something. There's a ton of that kind of stuff going on. So I'm going to break down 10 examples of types of quests. These are not different quests. These are literally just types of quests you can do. And I'm sure there's more that I could add to this list, but I think 10's fair. So the first one, gather these items. So I already mentioned Zelda. If you've ever played like Ocarina of Time, as a child, as little Link, you have to go and, you know, get the gems from the tree, from the mountain, and from the water people. And those three will unlock the Time Temple, which unlocks the Master Sword, which puts you to sleep, and then you have to you have to unlock all the sages in their temples. It's a go unlock this and find this item. And a lot of the Zelda games are like that. Think Majora's Mask, get all these masks. You know, on I forget which one, Wind Waker was it? Not Wind Waker. It was the one that was on the Game Boy. You had to wake up the sunfish or something like that. Whatever. So that's kind of the example of the gather these items. You know, the players have to go, you know, gather the shards of a broken sword and reforge it, and only that will bring down the bad guy. Whatever, something along those lines. Find and destroy things. I've already mentioned it again. Lord of the Rings. Bilbo found the ring. Frodo is tasked with destroying it. You know, again, simple quest. You know, something. It's not simple, but you know, maybe one of the players, or maybe a NPC finds the Book of Vile Darkness. You know, a book that's so evil that if you touch it, it will cause a ton of damage to you and possibly turn you evil. You know, and you have to destroy it, but there's no real way to destroy it because it's a legendary item, and you have to find a way to secrete it away or hide it, or, you know, throw it in a Mountain Doom, whatever. So that's another one. Prevent the big bad enemy guy, BBEG, from completing some sort of ritual, ascending, whatever. The example I have for this one made me laugh. Hocus Pocus, if you guys remember that as a kid. Hocus Pocus, the three witches, their whole thing is if they can eat the children of Salem before the sun rises, they'll live forever. And although they had tons of kids, they refused. Whatever. Plot hole. Anyways, next one: fulfill a prophecy. You jot down some sort of prophecy. Only when the adventurous band, forms, that can they destroy the big bad enemy guy. Whatever. You come up with it, and then have some sort of tasks. You can make a rhyming couplet that, they have to get this, this, and this, and that will help them destroy this. Whatever. There you go. Prophecy. I love having fortune tellers, card readers, tarot cards, all that kind of stuff in my games. And so the players will wander through a village, find some old crone, and she'll read their fortune, and, hey, we'll do this and that kind of whatever. So, yeah. So that's, you can get the prophecy from there. You can get whatever. Breaking a curse. So, this could be really, really complicated. This could be very, very simple. These all don't have to be main quests, but breaking a curse, again, Book of Vile Darkness, maybe, it's put some terrible curse on a king, and the king is now, whatever. I don't know, Beauty and the Beast, think of that. So, I'm sorry, fulfill a prophecy was the line, The Witch in the Wardrobe, for an example. There's the prophecy of the 4 children, 2 sons of Adam, 2 daughters of Eve. They'll sit in Carpelvel, and that will break the winter. Yeah. Break a curse, Sleeping Beauty. Girl will prick her finger before her 18th birthday on a spinning wheel and fall, will technically fall dead, but then, the last fairy got to say, no, she'll be in a sleep until true love's first kiss, which is creepy. She'll wake up. So break a curse. Find a lost treasure. So, it could be a city, lost city of El Dorado, lost city of Atlantis, lost city of whatever. It's up to you guys to decide. National treasure, obviously, is a good example of that one. Again, these are just all tropes that you can do for making your quest. Seeking for a lost parent or mentor. If you haven't seen this movie, Enola Holmes, it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. Great movie. That's a good example. Young adventurer goes, on a large quest to find a missing parent. There's clues along the way, encounters, fights, and, overcoming it with your wits and that kind of thing. That could be something. I generally use that kind of stuff for, players. But that could be something that could start a main quest. Maybe one of the PCs studied under a master or something like that, and he hasn't been heard of from years, and they go to find him, and then they find his body, and he has a journal, and then the journal picks up, and now they're on some other quest part of that. You don't have to do the whole quest arc for the whole thing. So conflicts of nations. So maybe you have a civil war and they have to play both sides. For this, real history, World War I. You've got, a bunch of nations, and your players could be clandestine, sneaking across lines, or just being mercenaries and trying to find out what both sides want, what motivated it, what caused it. Another way I think about it is the Battle of 5 Armies from The Hobbit. Gandalf shows up before the elves, humans, and dwarves get into it and says, hey, idiots, there's, a huge pack of goblins and wargs coming, and then they all band together. Something like that. Maybe have them do something like that. That's more of, I think, a social. If your players are... Here, one thing, let me stop real quick. One thing to mention, you need to know who your players are. If you got a bunch of noobs, ask them what they're expecting. If you've got people who really want to get into role-playing and develop their characters and stuff like that, a combat-heavy, centered quest or campaign is probably not what they're looking for. So if you have somebody who is like that, role-playing and, all that kind of stuff, maybe a Civil War is the best example, because that will give them a lot of interacting with people and talking and, that kind of thing. If they just want to hit stuff, resort to the more normal, dungeon clearing type quest lines or campaigns. You're the one who's writing it. You're the one who's guiding them. So, and then our last two, reopening a lost place. So this is really old story, but Alan Quartermain and Solomon's Lost Mines, something like that. Again, Atlantis, going Disney on that one. Finding a lost city, something that has been lost in nature. Probably one of the best quests in all of D&D, Lost Mines of Phandelver, is an excellent example. You've got a mine that had some rare element, some magical item, and it's now cut off from the world, and it's your player's job to get to it and relieve whatever is in there. Another good example, The Hobbit. Erebor is taken over by Smaug the dragon, and they have to alleviate it. Like I said, you can have multiple quest lines in the same thing, or story arcs. And then the last one, some sort of rite of passage. For that example, again, history, you've got like in Sparta, the Agogi, children who were taken from their parents, trained to be Spartan warriors, and they have at the end like a year there they have to live in the wilderness and survive, and then come back, and that's what decides if they're men or not. Or looking at Critical Role, you can probably see over my shoulder I have all the Critical Role Funko Pops. I'm a big fan. I love Vox Machina. I love both of them, but Vox Machina was a big fan for me. Keyleth had her Aramente to complete that, and that's something very easy to do. You can have a player focus on this, or you could have a main quest completely focused on this. It's all how much you put into it and how much your players want out of it. And we'll go into more about player quests in a bit. All right, so those are like the arc ideas, and I'll probably throw these up somewhere in the future of what I typed out, but I mean, really, it's any storyline. I mean, again, collecting items, Captain Planet, collecting, gems. They could face all the elementals. There's, 4 elemental lords, and then have the 5th elemental be something, nefarious, necromancy, whatever. And the 4 gems unlock that, and that's your big bad guy. Whatever. So, okay. So that's kind of going over the plot. You always want to pick one of those. If you do own the Dungeon Master's Guide, on page 71 is actually building a campaign, and they make it so you can roll dice to help you decide, or that. I don't like that. I pick what I want to do for my campaign, but if you're indecisive, you can do that. But it does provide more ideas. I think there's 20 of them for your kind of your quest idea. And then, so the next part, how do we start? What I'm referring to is not how do we start writing a campaign. What I'm referring to is, again, now you're making your feet of your quest. You've decided what path you're going to take. Now decide on where you're starting from. How do the PCs meet? In a good example, in Critical Role in Campaign 2, they meet at a tavern, and there was individual groups that had known each other before. Not was friends with Caleb, and so they were together, and then you had a group with the others, that kind of thing, and then they run into 2 others, and that's how the whole group comes together. I try to stay away from the campaign starting at a tavern, just because, there was a lot of these quest ideas I just threw out are cliches. It's the ultimate cliche in D&D. We start at a tavern. There's a wizard in the back. He's got an orb, and he tells me to go do something. So, you don't have to start it that way. You could start it that way. Who cares? How I started my campaign that's been running for a number of years, I started it with a tournament. So in medieval culture, a good example. I like giving you guys media examples. Shrek. You've got Shrek wanders in. He wants to get his swamp back. There's a bunch of fairies in it. He's mad. He wants to get all these people out of it. And at the same time, Lord Farquaad, whatever it was, he's throwing a tournament for the knights to decide who's going to go adventure to go get the princess and bring her back from the dragon. That's kind of what I did. I had all the players showed up for their own reasons to this tournament, and I had them fight individually against each other to start with. And then they were put into a group. Obviously, the battle master grouped them all together. And then they had to go fight 3 tiers of different other creatures. And they ended up being victorious. And then the kingdom assigned them a cleric, who was the NPC, because they didn't have a cleric. And I play that character. And that's how we've been for a number of years. And, eventually the cleric will eventually they'll probably kill the cleric. But, you can do it however you want. You can start in a tavern. You can start, I saw a really great idea that somebody had where all the players start off and they were all just resurrected by a necromancer. So, but they're not undead. They were, or you could have them start off in the 9 hells, or something like that, and somehow they're all bound together. But they're, they have to fight their way, like straight up like Dante, fight their way out of the 9 hells, and then they can go on a quest to find out who murdered them. Whatever. I mean, it's your chestnut. You can come up with whatever you want. I just like to be really creative with it and try and throw, a snowball into hell and let them figure it out. All right, so who or what's the big bad enemy guy? After you decide where you're starting, you're putting down your feet. Where are we going? How do you want it to end? So to decide on that, you first need to know who's your enemy guy going to be. So, you could go big with it, Tiamat, some huge divine, and if you do that, my suggestion is use like a cult or something like that that's trying to, bring them back or something like that. And also this whole thing is also dependent on how long you want to play for. If you're going with Tiamat and your players are supposed to defeat Tiamat, this is not going to be a you guys get to level 5 and you're done kind of campaign. This isn't going to be a 1 or 2 year campaign. That's going to be you need to reach level 20 kind of thing. I mean, look at Critical Role Vox Machina. They're what Matt did, which don't start off like this. This is I'm going over the beginnings. We will get to how you can create a campaign as broad as Matt Mercer, but you need to first figure out the start and finish. I would recommend try and get a campaign that you think will last up to, with a big bad enemy guy that will go to maybe level 5 to level 8, something like that. And then, you can have stretch goals. You can have, maybe pick a deity or a god or, somebody who wants to ascend to godhood. Something really down the road that's been the shadow puppet master behind all these things. So you could have like a cult, and there could be a number of really important people in the cult, and as they take down each individual person, it seems to always be leading to the next person, and then it turns out to be, oh god, it's this, and they just resurrected Tiamat. Now we have to deal with that. Whatever. It's, again, your guys' quest, your guys' campaign. But if you've paid attention to, like, for instance, Vox Machina, they're first in the Underdark. They have to, save Lady Kima, and then it's on to the next thing. And then it's on to the next thing. At the point where they think the kingdom's all saved and good and finally done, well, in comes the conclave of dragons. And they have to deal with the 4 dragons. And now they have to slay the dragons. At the same time, they have to get the vestiges. And then as soon as they get that, well then, the whole thing with Vecna comes up. So there's and they have to make the magical devices to bind essentially a god and kill a god. So it's another go find this, go do this, but also kill that. And so there was different levels, and so think about it like a book. You have your rising action, you have your climax, then you have your falling action. It's like a roller coaster. You got rising action, climax, and then as it starts falling, you build back up again, and you can keep on doing it. And you can do that with quests forever, like for campaigns. So, but I don't recommend starting off with that. Don't start a campaign and have 5 tiers in it with yada 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 yada. Do the planning for the first leg. Have an idea of who the ultimate big bad enemy guy is, who you'd want it to be if this is a dream line and everybody wants to stick around for, I mean, if all of my players still remained with me for my campaign, I would have 8 to 10 players right now. But we lost people, we gained people, we lost people, we gained people. It's going to happen. And if you lose enough, eventually you're just not going to have a campaign. So you don't want to waste all that time writing a book and then you don't use it. So, for the big bad enemy guy, my recommendation, you're looking in tiers. So, a campaign that I plan on doing, and when the next one we do of this will probably be actually making a campaign. What I'm thinking of doing is something along the lines of hags. I love hags. I love the witches. They're great. And then there's different varieties of them. I like doing sets of things. So elementals, here's 4 temples to the elementals. Here's the 4 lost cities of a people that used to make golems. Whatever. And so the players have to face those, and you can hit them in ranking order. The hags have different ranks, of difficulty. And if the players get too good, hit them with a coven. Or you can make it even more difficult. Let's say the hag. Good side quest here. An armorer is traveling through a forest with a bunch of his gear, selling it on the roadsides, and he runs across a hag who makes some advances towards him romantically. He spurns her advantage. He spans her advantage, and so she curses a suit of armor, and so now you have an animated suit of armor, which, by the way, is a monster in D&D, animated armor. And it's trudging through, the forest, hacking at people. Or it could be a whole bunch of suits of armor. Go straight up bed knobs and broomsticks with it. If you're young and you don't know what I'm just talking about, Google it. It's a good movie. It's a lot of fun. But, yeah, you could have a bunch of suits of armor wandering, and that could be something that your players have to deal with. And that gives that hag an army. Something at her disposal. She made suits of armor animated. And that also explains animated armor. It's, again, your creativity. You could make a gnoll into the big bad enemy guy. It's just, you could make a kobold, a goblin into the big bad enemy guy. It's just, how do you do it? How do you make it that, next level? I'll give you one example right now. Give them the Book of Eternal Darkness, or the Talisman of Eternal Darkness, something like that. It boosts up the power of just one person, and now they're insanely powerful. Something crazy, So, that's just an idea. I kind of already talked about this. How do you imagine the campaign ending? Where do you want it to go? So, for me, I have a plan of doing up to level 20. Now, I have subplots and a bunch of other stuff like that. The players have quest lines. Each one of the players gave me a backstory, and I tailored side quests, let's call them subquests, to each one of them. And they can hit on them, they can, and develop their characters. If you're, again, fan of Critical Role, each one of the players did that. Keyless was trying to do her Armente. You got Scanlan, who discovered himself, and also became the meat man, all that kind of stuff. You've got, you know, Vex and Vax, facing their father and, becoming essentially a lady and, you know, having to go on the wild hunt, all that kind of stuff. Everybody had some sort of quest. Vex, became an acolyte of the, not the Night Mother. I can't remember what it was. The Crow something. I don't know. Sorry. That was from Pathfinder, and I don't really remember too well on that. Hit me up in the comments if I don't remember. Hello, Kickstand. How are you doing? I'm doing very well. Welcome to the channel. If you have questions, let me know. I don't know when you joined in, so. But yeah. So where do you want your quest to go is a big key to this whole thing. Because, I mean, you could want to create a world that's as involved as Middle Earth and Tolkien and all that kind of stuff. But if your players are not going to stick around for, years, it's a good idea to know that beforehand. And if you're playing with a bunch of noobs, which that's how my quest started. Every single player, except for 2, had never played D&D before. Now, most of them are still with me, the new players, and we're as regular as an old man eating his fiber. But, if they get bored of something, then, it could be just quits. It just takes one thing for somebody to go, we're done, we don't want to play anymore. And all that planning I've done is wasted. So, my advice, if you're doing a campaign, you want to plan, you don't even have to plan sessions out. All you need to do is have just a general idea of where the story is going. And I'm going to get into that. So, again, talking about us traveling, talking about completing the campaign, where the campaign's going, what are your main encounters? So, what I mean by that is, let's take an easy one, The Hobbit. You've got the start is at Bilbo's house. All the dwarves barge in. Well, you got Gandalf who marks his door. Then the dwarves all barge in unannounced, have dinner, and then off they wisp off to try and get to the mountain. And there's several large quests in there. There's them stumbling into the Misty Mountain, or not the Misty Mountain, the Misty Mountains, yeah. And running into the goblins. Then there's them escaping after killing the Great Goblin. And now they're stuck in trees, and they're facing wargs. And then they fall off of, the trees. The eagles come in. They meet Bjorn, and they deal with Bjorn. That's another part. Then they go into the woods. They're lost in the woods, wandering around. Facing the spiders, all these kind of things. All those are encounters that you could have. Now, you don't have to have an encounter for every single moment planned out. It's the big ones. So, fighting the big bad enemy guys, lieutenants. What's the, if you're doing a gather these items kind of quest, like Zelda, something like that, you want to plan it out. I mean, maybe each one of those items is inside of a dungeon. So the big encounter is going to be fighting whoever the guardian is of those items, or who has that item. That's your big encounter. Them facing, an ambush of goblins or, bandits on the road. That's not something you really need to plan ahead of time for your campaign. I'm not even kidding. On my sessions, I spend about maybe an hour before each game. I spend an hour in my session, and that's how I plan things. Is I just sit down. What are my encounters? I have generally 3 or 4 encounters thrown together, and generally I never do all of them. There's been times where I did all of them and had to make more while we were in session. It happens. It's awesome when it happens. And then there's been sessions where we had 2 sessions where we didn't have fights at all. They had been through fight after fight after fight, and they were inside of a city. They bought a house. They, made deals. They hired a staff. They started their own their own company. And so it was a lot of role playing and them, or making arrangements, that kind of stuff. One of the players did have a cursed sword and straight up smacked one of them with it, and so that was a little bit of a thing, but it didn't never turn into an encounter. Luckily, the cursed individual rolled like 4 ones in a row. It was crazy, and so he just kept on missing trying to hit people. So that's kind of your main encounters are going to be like, if you've got a big bad enemy guy, if they have like a lieutenant or assistant or, or their underlings, like let's say you have a big bad enemy guy who is a bandit chief. Well, the bandit chief might have an operation running out of a house selling spice, drugs, whatever. He might also have a money laundering operation somewhere else. And you might have something else. Those would be your big encounters, is clearing out those areas, which gets you on the road to facing him. So, if that makes sense, please let me know. I'm trying to explain this as easily as possible. And then, do your PCs have any allies? Or are there allies that they can make? That's up to you. Right now, my players have an NPC that's their ally. If they say the wrong thing, he's going to just be like, toodles, guys. Well, I'm out. And he is a cleric, so he's a useful person. You don't have to necessarily create a player that plays with them. But, for instance, what about a shopkeeper that they befriend and they end up sponsoring, and he gives them discount on supplies, magic items, looks for stuff for them, makes stuff for them. If you look at, for instance, Matt Mercer's campaigns, he has a character like that in every single campaign so far. You've got, Pumat Sol and his many copies. You've got Gilmore and his glorious goods. And there's those individuals that help them. You could have an alchemist or a potion maker, something like that, who sends them on quests to go harvest, ingredients from monsters. If you collect a basilisk eye and you bring it to me, it goes bad in so many days, and you bring it to me, I'll pay you this and this, and I'll give you store credit, that kind of stuff. That's a good thing to have. If you've got somebody who makes potions, what's something an adventuring party always needs? They need health potions. Or they could maybe get some other interesting potions from them. And that's a way to also barter instead of, here, you fought this basilisk, here's 500 gold. Moving on. Like, why would a basilisk have gold? That doesn't make sense. Unless it's like a dragon and it hoards it, but it doesn't. So, that's something I try to be mindful of is, if a dragon, yes, will have a hoard. But other creatures, they're not going to be finding gold unless they're, the dead bodies of other adventurers around or something like that. Because they don't have any need for gold or care about it. So that's where you come with your allies. And then the last part is deciding on your city and dungeon builds. So you're filling out that world. So what I do often, this is something I really recommend doing. If you have your map, make a cool shape. Straight up go national treasure with it. You don't have to decide, well, it looks like it'll be good for... Just draw a pentagram on the map, and every side of the star, is where one of the magic items is hidden, or a boss is, or something like that. So when, at the end of your campaign, or once your players finally get to the last one, they might actually figure that crap out. And, draw a pen... Oh, one, I know where the next one is, and that's creepy as shit. And then you could have the big bad boss fight in the middle of the pentagram. It doesn't have to be a pentagram, and if you think a pentagram's evil, go away. It could be anything. It could be a triangle, it could be a square, it could be whatever. I think that's just cool stuff to do. Like, having it, because that shows that you plan it out the whole time, but you don't have to plan everything. That's what I'm saying. So let's use an example real quick. Let's use the elementals, because I've mentioned them a couple times. You have 4 elementals. Types. You've got, general 4 types. Fire, earth, water, air. Cool thing, Pathfinder, if you watch the channel, you've seen I painted 3 now of the elemental lords that are out. They're giant elemental lords. They're massive. They're gigantic monsters. And then they have large, medium, and small elementals. There you go. You have a temple to the elementals. The big bad boss in those temples is the elemental lord. And when they die, maybe there's a shard, like a pure elemental crystal or something they drop that the players are trying to collect. Or maybe there's a bad group that's trying to get it and they're chasing after them, trying to beat them to it. Whatever. So, you fight the elemental lords, whatever. Well, the 4 temples, like I said, could be on your map. And the center of those 4 temples, if you draw a line through it, makes a cross. And on the cross, X marks the spot. That's where the, big bad that's trying to, come out of the ground or whatever is coming from. It's a very simple concept, but you don't have to plan the temples. All you have to do is mark your map where you want them to be. How simple is that? A ruler, boom, boom. And when your players figure it out, you've had it planned since day one. It's not that you threw it together, but it didn't require you to, again, write a book. You could come up with this in less than 20 minutes. I just did it in 5. So, and then you can plan your cities and dungeons. So, for cities, there's one guy who recommended that I thought was cool. He took his map, put it on the ground, and he had like 4 or 5 grains of rice and dropped them on the map. And wherever they landed, that's how he decided where the cities were. I try to spread all of mine out, and I try to keep like harbor. For me, historically, I want to have, this is close to water, so, commerce and trading, and, back in the day, water was a key thing. You always had to be near water, so like rivers, ponds, lakes, that kind of thing. That's kind of where I try to put my cities. Harbor towns, if you have a town next to a lake or a city or whatever, put them in some higher age. They've got water wheels controlling machines. Maybe you've got Arcanus there and all this cool stuff. Make it steampunk, whatever. It's up to you. It's your campaign. So, that's kind of how to decide the skeleton. We've got the head, we've got the feet, and we've kind of got the journey up the vertebrae. So, now how do you get the arms, legs, and all the muscles, and all the fat and all that crap? Well, how we do adding meat, subquest lines. So, limbs. What I always do while I'm planning campaign, if I've got a new group that I'm forming for D&D, and I'm not going to run a standard campaign, I'm creating my own. I already know about it several months in advance. I tell my players, I need your backstories by this date. Make your characters, or do a sessions, or I'll do a session 0, and then, don't tell them anything about the quest. We're just making characters, session 0, and then a month later, I have the campaign and we go, and so it gives them like a week, 2 weeks to do a backstory. Backstory doesn't have to be overcomplicated. I've had players show up with 10 pages. It's whatever works for them, works for you. But it doesn't need to be a whole crazy thing. I have a player who really struggled to come up with some sort of backstory that he was happy with, and he just sent me a text. We work together, so he sent me a text at work. And he goes, hey, how about I have a journal from my parents, and it's just complete gibberish. It's not language, it's just madness. Done. I'm thrilled. That's the best thing about being a DM, is when somebody hands you a chestnut like that, and they're just, so I can go crazy with that. Maybe it's the mad rantings of somebody who tried to read the Book of Vile Darkness. I know I keep on bringing that one up, but somebody who touched the talisman of ultimate evil, whatever. Or maybe it was somebody who gazed into a portal. I don't want to mention this movie, but it's a good example. Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull. There was that one archaeologist who got a hold of the Crystal Skull and it messed him up, and he had a bunch of rantings and ravings, and they did make sense after after the context. You could do something like that. Maybe they got to a point, saw something, and now their brains are addled, and these are just clues. And it doesn't have to be a language. I have one of the players who has the book of, or he has the helm of comprehending languages, and he tries to use it all the time to read the book. Nope. I've got a rogue. He tries to use, like, is it thieves' cant? No, it's not thieves' cant. Like, it's just madness. Just because we understand all the languages does not mean that you can just read it. Good example in real life, the Voynich manuscript. Look that up if you're bored. The Voynich manuscript is the book that cannot be read. It's a real book. It's been around for a couple hundred years, and it can't be read. Period. Like, no one has a clue what it says in the book, but everybody looks at it, and it is a real language, from what they can tell. All the linguists have looked at it, and there's some people who dedicate their lives trying to read it. Still can't read it. So, all right. So subquest lines, again, they can be as simple as the sub stories for your players. They could be just side adventures. If you've ever played like an Elder Scrolls game, you've got the main quest, you've got the guild quest lines where you're trying to level up in the guild. It could be stuff like that. And so let me flip over to my notes here. So when I describe quest lines, I actually have a definition for each one of these. So subquests are multiple encounter quest lines, such as PC development quest, like a guild quest that that progresses you through a guild or ranks you up through a guild, stuff like that. Or it could be a shorter micro main quest. It doesn't have to be. You could have multiple main quests going at the same time. Really, but I recommend having a couple subquests, because if the main quest they're getting bogged down or something, it gives them a way to change venue, and so a good example. Let's see, like we'll stick with the elemental thing. You've got the 4 elementals. They've got through 2 temples and they're just bored or whatever. They don't. It's really far out there and they don't want to go there. Maybe it's around Halloween time in real life. Give them a den of vampires and some vampire lord, whatever. And there's your, sub-quest line. And again, how I define a sub-quest is something that's going to take several sessions to resolve. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, we did this and now it's over with. And that's where we get into mini quests. Mini quests I have tons of them. I can scroll up this document really quick. Each one of these numbered is a mini quest. And sorry, I know this is all crazy in the document side. I've been working on a campaign assistance book, if you will, campaign guide, my own campaign books as well. And been working on it for a very long time, and so I don't want to reveal all of it because, eventually I'm going to try and publish it. So, but I have probably 50 to 100 like mini quests just that I throw out there. It's a good thing to have. And then random encounters. Random encounters are defined to me as just random crap you throw out. Like, players are wandering in the Underdark, a couple ropers fall out of the sky, and they attack them. And they fight them off. Again, up to you guys. It's, you're going to have... You want to throw out random encounters often, because that's how players level up. Mini quests I use to... If you've ever played, like I said, an Elder Scrolls game, a blacksmith lost his hammer. You go to try and retrieve it. A young child runs up to you. They lost their dog. And you go to help them find their dog, and it turns out their dog is a direwolf. And they have to deal with that. It's up to you. But it gives the players... You're able to give the players things back, because when they finish the quest line, depending on how they do, the individual that sent them on that quest could pay them. For the direwolf example, maybe one of the players has wanted a companion animal, not a familiar, but a companion animal, and a puppy slash direwolf pup that they can raise is a way to do that. And it's a simple, they go off trying. I mean, you could do that as almost like a one shot. That's how I kind of differentiate the two. Mini quests are something I could do as a one shot, and in one 4 or 5 hour session. Subquest lines are 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how much the party wants to get into it and how much they want to talk. So that's adding your meat to your stories, and I've shown it in other videos, but for my campaigns, I have a big binder, a very, very big binder, and I have all my subquests in there. And so when the players get on it, I actually move that page into the front portion, so I can keep track of where they're at, on what quests, what they're doing, what they're going for, and then each city, we've already gone over building a city. So watch that live stream if you're looking to do that. Into that, I have several of those pages that, one of the ones I typed out, I have a bunch of those of, here's this, here's that, here's the description. And as things play out in those cities, I can keep on adding to them. It's easy to put another page in a binder. It's easy to type another page into on a Word document, whatever. And so the last big part, this is where people like to go crazy. And so I put it as the last thing because, like I said, you want to have your skeleton, you want to have your outlook of the book, of your campaign before you go crazy on this stuff. So creating lore. Create books, scrolls that tell stories. Players can go into bookshops, they can go into libraries, and depending on how they do an intelligence check or investigation, that kind of stuff, it can give them backstory that you don't have to provide. The zealots, cults, you can create those, and those could also drive, the players. If the players are just meandering along the roads and all of a sudden out of nowhere somebody tries to stab them, and they defeat them, and that person is wearing cultist robes and has a talisman to some. Now they have that, they're going to investigate that, and that would lead them to, maybe some other big bad, and now you've created a subquest. I love using cultists. It's great. They're so useful for everything. Legends, heroes, monsters, madmen, those are great. Legends, the difference between history and legend is, for instance, look at modern King Arthur. History's not sure King Arthur was a real person or a real thing. It's a legend. He might have lived, he might have, inspired this, but he might have not. We're not really sure. I used, for my quest, there was another party of adventurers. They're called the Platinum Party. I can't remember what it was. It was the Platinum something. And they, ran quests, that kind of stuff. And then after fighting Ancient Black Dragon, one of the party was killed, and they kind of broke up, and the Beatles, the band broke up, and everybody went their separate ways. And some of the party who were like elves still live. Some who are humans do not. And that ties into the story. They can ask about that and get other information about the more prevalent individuals of where the storyline is. Another thing, like I said, with this is another thing I implement in my stories, having the players find a journal. So this guy goes back to the books, scrolls. I have in my campaign a handwritten journal that's probably like 70 or 80 pages long. There's pictures in it I've drawn, handwriting all over, just whatever. And the players can use that journal. Again, that journal tells a story. The journal could talk about previous adventures that are long over with, it could mention stuff that the player didn't try before he died, and now these players have it. It could have secrets in it. You get what you put out of D&D. I have a bunch of products that I love for D&D. Like, I love waxed seals. I love creating a real contract and giving it to my players, and they sign on it with a quill and ink. I love doing that kind of stuff. My journal is a very real journal. It's a leather-bound book. They have it, and you could go crazy with it. You could use, lemon juice, right? Fake stuff in it, or make invisible ink. You can go absolutely nuts. Rip a page out of it, and they find the page somewhere else, and when you rip the page out, it makes it seem like the other guy's the bad guy, and so they go and confront him, and when you put the page in, it's totally not that guy, it's somebody else, and that page being ripped out made it seem like it's somebody else. The creating your lore is something, that's where the real creativity goes in. Prophecies, again, like I said, you could make some rhyming story or couplet, or it doesn't have to rhyme. Whatever. And the players found the gold ruby, and if they bring it to pour, upon this mountain, it will show them the way. Whatever. Read Redwall. I Am That Is. Two Mice Within Redwall. Matthias and Martin. Sorry, I love that book. There's a prophecy in it of two people being one and the same. One was an ancient hero, and one is a young boy who takes on his mighty role. And all of it is through a tapestry that already told the story, but they don't realize it until it's all over. So, prophecies, that's another good way to do things. Again, if you block out doing the skeleton method that I've been talking about, you can make a prophecy that actually guides the players to each one of your main encounters. That's the thing I'm trying to explain to you guys, is that making a campaign is so easy. It's not like oh my gosh, I have to freak out. I hear people just, I gotta make a new campaign. And they start freaking out about it. Like, oh my gosh, how are you gonna, give me a few hours, I'll have something. It's all simply done. And you don't need the Dungeons Master's Guide, but I'm not even kidding if you read through it. The first 3 chapters are what I'm talking about. I've never used it to actually make a campaign. I'll reference, I do use the Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's more of reference of, what the right costs for things are, or what, stuff like that. Give me ideas on merchants and stuff like that, economies, and and it also does give me a good ground line for rules and that kind of thing. But building my campaign, that's the fun. So have fun with it. Don't randomly roll dice and let that decide it. As I mentioned before, in fortune tellers, they could tell your prophecy. That could be a fun gimmick to have with your players. Something I did, my players already know this, so I can say it. I have a deck of tarot cards, and what I did is the players ran into a fortune teller, and I did a card reading with them. Now, I preset the cards. That's easy enough to do. And so it told the story I wanted it to tell. Again, setting a prophecy, telling a future that could or could not happen. If it doesn't happen, you can play the whole nonsense with fate, you didn't buy into your fate. And they can become obsessive with it, twist it to make it that it's, that's how fortune telling is. Don't commit to anything. Just, blasé, I see darkness, the whole Professor Trelawney, I see the grim. Does that mean he's gonna die? Does it mean somebody else gonna die? Is somebody's gonna die? So, and then artifacts. Sprinkle your world with, history and artifacts. Something I do with my campaign. My players have um, have found relics of that are lost to, like, history stuff, that legendary items. I don't want to call them vestiges because that's Matt's thing, but for instance, I created the storyline of a great forge master, and this forge master developed a new type of steel that is magic in its own right, infused with something that I can't say. And this art has only been passed on from her lineage, and there's only one. It's just like, if you guys follow history at all, or you follow the Game of Thrones, Valerian steel is a very real thing in real life. It's called Damascus steel. And Damascus we still don't know how it was made to this day. Like, I mean, we can make Damascus and replicate it, but we don't know how they made it. Like, the process is just lost to history. Same thing with Greek fire, lost to history. No one knows how to make it. And it's because it was always passed down from, father to the son, trade secret, don't tell anybody, yada, yada, yada. And so that's kind of what that blacksmith does. And so, like, the players could find, like, an artifact, a shard of, maybe the tip, or maybe the hilt of it, maybe the, whatever. It's up to you guys. Of that sword, and then it's, as they go, you could present them with discovering more pieces to it. And then they have to find a master of that lineage to reforge it. And you could do something like that. You could have, again, maybe there's something like the vestiges. Ultimate powerful items. I created, it's on D&D Beyond, I created a pocket watch. I love pocket watches. I have a number of them. And I created a pocket watch that has a couple spells in it that control time. Now, one of those spells is a 9th level spell, and the other one is like slow time or whatever like that. Just those two spells are monumental of having as a player. And so even if you were level 10 and you got a hold of that, that's a huge thing. And so I have it that, like, a deity or something like that is in possession of that watch. And so if he has it, it's got to be an item that the players could get a hold of, possibly, right? Or maybe he torments them with it. How fun would that be? Every single time the players finally confront him, there's a quick moment, and then they all unfreeze, and he's not there. It just disappears. And each time they try and figure out, like, I counterspell it, I whatever like that, it doesn't work. Because he's not essentially casting a spell to disappear, he's casting a spell to stop time. And they wouldn't know that until after he stopped time. And they wouldn't know that until he briefly walked away after taking a couple of their items. If you stop time, you could literally just walk up to him. Oh, that's a nice knife. Take it, wander off. For my rogue who has a dagger of warning, I want to do that so bad all the time. That thing drives me crazy. So, again, I know this has kind of been like a quick run through. It doesn't have to be complicated, like I said. Creating a campaign is literally, it's as much work as you put into it as you get out of it, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be overly complicated. Whenever I've sat down and tried to write a book or write a story, if I did planning beforehand, it's almost like I don't even have to write. Like, I'm on the adventure in my brain right as I go along, because I kind of know where it's going. If I sit down and nothing, and then I start typing, and then eventually I'm gonna have what's called writer's block, or writing yourself into a corner is what it is, where you write yourself into a plot hole. How do these players get out of here? How do you do this kind of stuff? Another idea for a recommendation, this you'd have to pay money to do, but seriously, if you've ever played Elder Scrolls, Elder Scrolls will teach you so much about writing a campaign because they've got it down to a science. You're talking about a video game that has like literally 1,000 quests in it that you can run. Main quests, sub quests, mini quests, that kind of stuff. Random encounters, you'll run into random stuff as you wander around. You have to fight it off. It's a perfect example of a D&D campaign. In fact, I call the Elder Scrolls games, D&D for one. It lets you play by yourself, and you're the adventurer, and you don't have to have a dungeon master like that. And now it doesn't have the same fun, I think, as D&D, but it's a good substitute when you don't have a group together. So, playing that will give you an idea. I mean, almost every one of the dungeons for Elder Scrolls is in the looping pattern. And what I mean by that is you have to go in, up here, go around there, whatever, and then over, then down. And then your boss room is up here. Well, you entered in over here. Once you beat the boss, there's some door that's locked or some, or maybe it was a giant ledge you have to jump down. And now you're at the entrance and you just walk out. You don't have to backtrack all the way. One of the concerns my players have is that they're in the Underdark. And their concern is that, well, we're in the Underdark. What are we, how are we ever going to get out of here? They've been in the Underdark for literally since last year. A number of, we're probably into 16 or 17 sessions. And they keep on going further and further in. And their concern is it's going to take them as long to get out as they've been going in. Now, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. It's up to them. But it's something, as a DM, you kind of want to have that in mind too. Another thing with your quests or your campaign, to give you an idea. The very start, your players are going to be low level. They're going to have to travel everywhere on foot. So, you're going to have a lot of, it's a 2-day ride to this near city. Okay, 2 days. So, run into Goblin Pack. Maybe the Goblin Pack has, is maybe one of the goblins they rescue and he leads, or not rescued, but, they interrogate him and he leads them to a goblin city that, they decide to wipe out or whatever. There's a horde there, whatever. And then they come back to the road, and so it could be several sessions of traveling to a city. Once they get higher up and they get, teleportations, they get, the traveling between plants and trees, that kind of thing, you're going to have a lot more speed between, they're going to look for sigils of, can I jump here in the future, that kind of stuff. So that's also something to keep in mind. You don't have to, the map, like I said, name a bunch of cities in the areas. But if your map is all the way over here, and your players are all the way over here, you don't need to name everything over here and make, a bunch of crap to it. They're not going to get there for months, years, whatever. So you've got time to create your, to do that. It's a lot easier in a planning session versus a campaign building session. To, one session. Again, we did a city together. You could pop out one city in an hour-long planning session that the players might reach in a week or two or something like that. And now you've got it. It's ready. That's the nice thing. But once, and that's the thing, you want to add on to that line, the campaign over time. You don't have to have 50 books of information and history and fortune tellers and all that stuff. If there's no one there, if there's no bookshops, if there's no fortune teller to give it to them, they're it. So you're the one who provides it. So you have the time, you have the ability to control it. I always try and describe this to new DMs. You're the one driving the school bus. You can tell all the players in the back to sit down, shut up, and we'll get there when we get there. It's your control. And if you are one of those ones who wants to build and write a book before your players get there, I've got 500 pages for this campaign. All the more power to you. This isn't really probably for you then. This is more of a starter guide. But as I've said before, there's a bunch of stuff you could do, even if you're an experienced DM, to up your game. Writing a journal with a bunch of backstory and then actually physically giving it to your players. Puzzle boxes, Rubik's Cubes. Now, I do 3D printing. You guys probably know that if you follow me on Instagram, which you don't, please follow me on Instagram. The Leprechaun Fantasy Workshop. My links are in here. But I've made a Rubik's Cube that is a dwarven puzzle box. It looks and works just like a Rubik's Cube, but each side is a different symbol of magic. Very cool. I got it on Thingiverse. Go on Thingiverse. You can find those if you do 3D printing. If you have ever seen the Da Vinci Code, the movie, I have the Codex, that big brass. And there's a company that supplies D&D like items, puzzles, puzzle boxes, magic pens that do different things. I think I linked them a while back. Hi, Colpy. How are you doing? You can, get stuff like that. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be authorized by the world of D&D either. Go out and buy, a random puzzle. Throw it at your players. Go and get a random book of riddles. I can tell you right now, that's the best thing ever. Get a bunch of books of riddles for like 5-year-olds and give it to a player and watch them sweat. Like you wouldn't believe some of the things that happen when you throw a riddle. Like, because again, riddles in the dark. You got the Hobbit. And you're not ripping it off or whatever like that. It's as I mentioned before in a live stream. I did a live in one of my sessions. I had a game where it was a logic puzzle. I like, even though the players have magic and they want to counter spell or I cast this to answer me that kind of stuff. That's lame. I want you to use your brains. So put a practical puzzle in there. What I did for mine was the players, there was a basin in the room, and the players, a couple of them walked in, not all of them did, and as soon as they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut and sealed. And I can't remember what activated it, if the players just casting magic or reaching in the basin, whatever, something activated it, and there was 3 faces on the wall, and as soon as they activated the trap, water started pouring in. And before that had happened, the 3 faces had told a riddle. And the riddle was something along the lines of, we can burn you, we can destroy you when we're angry, tempest, we can, it was more poetic than this, but the answer was water. And the room then started filling up with water, and the players, they're trying to cast stuff. They're trying to, see if it's a mechanical trap, checking for traps, that kind of stuff. All this stuff to try and deactivate it, and the basin before them filled with water was the answer. It was just right there before them the whole time. And what I did with that basin was, it wasn't just a trap to try and kill them. They were trying to find some magic guy, and I had put a by the way, if you guys are following on Twitch, Culpy is one of the players. He is the one who figured out the riddle, so kudos to you, sir. You do have a 500 IQ. But the I had that dwarven puzzle box. They could see it in the basin, and it looked like they could touch it, but each time they would reach in, their hand with it at the bottom, it was magic that created that, but the trap was completely unmagical in origin. Magical in operation, so it couldn't be diffused through magic, but it was just a logic puzzle. It was a lot of fun. And they ended up getting that puzzle box, and now they have another puzzle. And they've still yet to solve that. Eventually they'll figure it out. I hope. But, yeah. And that might lead down to another road that might just, do nothing at all. Might destroy the world. Who knows? So, that's the thing. You can come up with something simple enough. That whole trap, that whole room, was just something I added in a dungeon. Now, granted, the players were looking for this magic guy and whatever, and they were looking for his vast library they had heard about, and that's the only scraps that they found of him. Might just sleight of hand it and do every combination possible. I dare you. I dare you, Colpy. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever done a Rubik's Cube, but the more you fiddle with it, the harder it gets, I believe. I know there's some solution to it. I don't care. But yeah, introducing basic puzzles into your campaign as a storytelling implement, adding into your game. Again, you could have pre-written, notes. You could have a note from somebody that is handwritten or something like that. And that leads the players on the path when they, discover a dead guard on the road and he's got a scroll with a bunch of targets on it or something like that. Or maybe a cultist attacks them and it's got a hit list on it with one of the PCs on it and then a bunch of other names. That doesn't take a whole lot of time to just sit there and jot it down. You can get really nice with it. I bought a bunch of parchment paper that you'd print your diplomas on and that kind of stuff. And I just use that, and write it down, try to be very, very nice. Or you can, if you have terrible handwriting, put a fancy font on your computer, print it on there, throw a wax seal on, whatever. You're the one who's as creative as possible. All these things are not overly too expensive. There's a wax seal Game of Thrones set on Amazon for $20. I think it was when I got it. Walmart sells wax seals. Fun fact. If you're looking to get into the wax seal business and add that to your game, Walmart has it. It's in the wedding section. I buy wax from there all the time. It is a lot of white, silver, and black, but that's kind of actually awesome colors. Black could be like a Dark Brotherhood, Assassin Guild thing or something like that. Whatever. But it's more like white, silver, gold, whatever. And you can buy wax seal stuff on Amazon. But then you can get a bunch of the actual bosses for doing different seals for different lords, ladies, kings, whatever. Amazon will sell them, and there's probably bundles of them you can buy for $20 or like that. So doing that, the quill. I have a quill because I thought it was cool. I wouldn't go to that level, in my opinion. It's more work than it's worth, in my opinion. I started just printing on parchment and then using the wax seals, that kind of thing. I have done for sessions and that kind of stuff, pulling out the ink quill and letting players sign their name on a contract with it. That's kind of fun. But again, it's your imagination. You can put whatever you want into your quests. Like I said, I've got a whole bunch of gimmicks for mine. There's some things that I have that are real. For instance, I forget what it's called. The deck of many things. Magical deck that's very, very terrifying. I have a real set of it with the real cards on it, and it looks like a set of tarot cards, but it's not. And that I special bought from a Kickstarter. I think the Deck of Many Things is the company, actually. If you Google them, you'll probably be able to find it. But then I have a deck of illusion that the rogue has. Do you have the deck for illusions too? Yes. So again, if you're watching on Twitch, Colpy's talking about it. He has the deck of illusions. For that, I just use a deck of playing cards. If you have a Dungeon Master's Guide or like that, it is actually have what each card means. You don't have to special order stuff. You can buy, I can tell you this right now, you can buy a deck of cards at the dollar store for a single $1. I know this for a fact. The Dollar Tree, if you're in the U.S. and there's a Dollar Tree, they sell decks of cards. And you can just do that. Yes, it's the one you have. The Deck of Illusions. I don't have the Deck of Illusions yet. That'll be something I'll look at doing in the near future. Sorry. So, again, there's things you can add to your campaign. It doesn't have to be physical items. I like that kind of gameplay. But we haven't really been able to do that because of COVID. We've all still been work from home. So all of our games are online. And I've had to come up with workarounds for that. Some of the things that I've done is have my players, I show them the objects, the journals. I may or may not, they haven't gotten a hold of the journals yet. They know about it, so that's why I'm talking about it. But I could send, pictures of every page and have that in an archive somewhere that they could access online. Or one of the players I could give it to, and, now they physically have it. So it's kind of work around that kind of thing. What we do for like the decks when they're trying to, draw a card from the deck of illusions, that kind of thing, is I just have the deck in front of a camera just as I'm talking to you. I have the cards out and, tell me when to stop. Okay, stop. Are you happy with this card? All right. And then I just turn it over and that's what decides it. So, yeah. But we kind of are at an hour and a half here. I mean, that's an hour and a half of really gotten going through the campaign. Books and journals sounds like smart people items, not the need for Levi. It's in Thieves' Cant. You'll love it. So you don't have to overthink your campaigns. I could probably come up with 4 main campaigns in the span of 4 hours. You could probably do one in an hour. It's not. Now, I'm not making the cities. I'm not planning the dungeons. I'm just looking again for the skeleton of where are we starting? What's the general idea for my journey, and where do I ultimately want the players to go? Your subquests, 30 minutes to an hour for those. Subplots, you can call them. And then mini quests, I wouldn't even plan those. Just have a list of mini quests. That's just fun to do. Just what's a side adventure I could have them do? And just think of anything, random stories. I had an example, all the main quests was something that I took from media or history. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Players wander into the city, find a dead body. Who, what, where, when, why. Investigate it. And now you're on a mini quest or a sub quest. They don't know. You do. So. Thieves' Cant. The meme that keeps giving. So. But, guys, it was great hanging out with you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I believe next week what we're going to do is physically write down an actual campaign. Put some of the bits and pieces that we've gone over before all together with this. And as long as you guys are okay with it and I don't have any, Levi, calm down. You'll be fine. We'll get through this. It's not overly difficult. It is a lot of fun. Throw out some resources real quick that I use for campaign building. First off, D&D Beyond. You can put your campaign there. Your players can be tied into it. You can release information there. It's awesome. Great tool. Another tool that is outstanding for players that just makes things easy for you, makes things easy for your players. The fantasy name generators. If I need to name a city, let's name our world, our continent. Boom, I just clicked on continent. I don't know how to say any of these, so Elise, whatever. If you can't really say them, you can always just click again. Clambor, the continent of Clambor, whatever. They've got things for everything here. Fantasy names, dwarf names. Now I've got Thurfrang Flint Miner. It's a very dwarvy name. Get female names. I don't know how to say any of those. And since Levi's here with me, he can attest to this. My character's name is Thurkrid. He's a mountain dwarf. I totally got this from here. So it's a great resource. There's a ton of great resources. Here again, this is literally from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Chapter 1, A World of Your Own, about how to build your world. Creating a multiverse. I don't suggest if you're a new DM, don't start thinking about the planes of existence. That's that gets really, really complicated really, really quick. You can add on to that. I mean, if you have all new players, the odds are if you're a new DM, it's going to be either with veteran players who are going to walk you through it, or you're all new to the game, which is great. I welcome you all. It's a lot of fun. Don't get overly freaked out. People freak out because they don't know what to do, and they think, oh, everybody's going to hate it. Don't worry about it. And then, chapter 3 is creating your adventure. And no joke, I mean, you got your published adventures. If you're a new DM and you don't feel ready to... I don't recommend actually starting off as a new DM and creating your own world. Go out, buy the starter set. I know I said I don't usually advertise buying stuff. Lost Mines of Phandelver is the greatest adventure I think published for 5e right now. I love it. It's an absolute great adventure. Levi was a part of Lost Mines. We only did a couple sessions of it, but it was a lot of fun. It really is a great... I mean, I've read through the whole thing, but our group fell apart, and then we made another group, and that's where I created my own campaign. But Lost Mines is outstanding. It's the whole campaign. It gets you from level 1 to level 5, so it's a good way for everybody to get their feet wet. And then you could roll into your own campaign from that in the world that they've already created. And you can, create your own world. They have their characters. They're already at level 5, so... everybody's not, the wizard's not getting knocked out in 3 seconds and dead. That kind of stuff. But, like I said, even the book, your beginning, middle, and end, that's it. That's what they recommend. And then they've got, like I said, these lists. Your dungeon goals, you can roll a d20, and it'll give you, rescue a captive, acquire treasure, foil a villain's evil scheme, whatever. It's the same kind of quest line thing that I mentioned. So the Dungeon Master's Guide also walks through this. I try to cut out a lot of the, the additions, and just kind of get down to the nitty gritty, so I can do it in under an hour. If you have to read through 30 pages or 3 chapters, if you're going through all 3 of them, it's going to be a lot more than an hour. So, yeah, and then, like I said, so this is D&D Beyond again. We talked about this last week. It's a great resource. You've got your game rules, that kind of stuff. That will help you in building your campaign. You've got your campaigns here under my collections. You can build your NPCs, any of your homebrew creations, collections of magic items that you put into your world, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's, again, another great resource. So, but guys, I think that will be it for tonight, unless somebody's got some last minute question that popped in a chat. Like I said, we're going to go over this more in depth in the near future. I really want the I really want to touch on a lot of stuff going forward of, planning, creating a campaign together, and then maybe even running through some adventures, some subplots or quick, here's how I would do it. This is how I would think, and run through some encounters of how I would deal with players. So, again, my opinion on D&D, you guys get what you put into it, what you get out of it. I'm not saying you have to spend money to get out of it. I have spent a whole horde of money on D&D in my 3D printing shop and that kind of stuff, but that's what I do. I've always been a model maker. I've been a writer my entire life. So I'm not doing anything that I wouldn't be doing anyways. I'm just putting my efforts, instead of building model cars and building the motorcycle that's been in my garage for months, I'm, building my own worlds and my own models and that kind of stuff. So, but, all right, guys. Well, I will see you in the next one. Again, please like, subscribe, comment. This stuff goes up on Facebook, so it'll be up there forever unless somehow, something happened that I didn't know about and I have to take it down. So you guys can review this. You can pause it. You can go back. But please, again, like, subscribe. You guys' follows are, I am still, this is all out of pocket. So I am working towards, trying to be monetized and trying to do more. I'm trying to build a Patreon. But if you guys don't tell me what you want me to do or what you want me to look at, that kind of thing, I'm just shooting in the dark. So if this is helpful for you guys, let me know. If you think I'm blowing smoke and, do more painting tutorials or talk about, the equipment I use for running the campaigns, my computer setups, whatever, or you just want me to do more gaming, we can do that. Whatever. Maybe Mike and I will play Overcooked and look like a bunch of idiots. We just got it for free today from Epic or something like that. So, that's going to probably happen. So, but yeah. But you guys have a great rest of your day. Again, make your fantasy your own. It's your guys' adventure. You don't have to do what the book says unless you're running a book campaign. Even then, you can change the rules. It's your campaign, your adventure. Do what you want to do. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have fun adventuring.